Hey everybody, what's going on? Helllight here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. If you couldn't tell by the footage, today I want to talk about the Swain rework and how well it's doing so far. Now, it's only been a couple of days, but I've been spamming the hell out of Swain over the last couple of games I've been playing. I think he's a lot of fun to play, and I think he's definitely a better champion now than he was previously. Now, first and foremost, I think that Swain does still kind of has the theming of Master Tactician that he had beforehand, so I don't think that's entirely gone, so old Swain fans should be a fan of that, but I also think he's a significantly more healthy champion. He has better win conditions, he has better loss conditions, and I think in general there's more players can do to outplay Swain, as opposed to Swain just kind of becoming a giant stat ball that you can't do anything about. So, first and foremost, I want to talk about the biggest advantages that Swain has, which are probably not what you're thinking of. The strongest part of Swain's kit is the right click he gets as part of his passive. Now, if you're not clear on what that means, whenever Swain comes near an immobilized enemy champion, he can right click them during the duration of the immobilize effect to pull them towards himself and rip out a soul fragment. On paper, the best use for this is to just get a soul fragment, because Swain needs to stack up enough of these to have the ability to cast his ultimate in the first place, but also to get the most value out of his ultimate in the end. Pulling out a soul fragment also gives him a little bit of sustain. However, the strongest part of this is the pull. It's a fairly long-ranged pull, as you might be able to tell from some of the gameplay footage, and the fact that it can trigger on any immobilize, not necessarily just never move, is what makes it significantly strong, because a max range Jana Tornado hits an enemy squishy, you pull that squishy closer to your team, that squishy has to flash, or that squishy dies. It basically gives you guaranteed follow-up to any crowd control that lands on somebody, which is really, really strong, because anything that hits them will automatically have something else that you can follow up for, and it just makes it very, very powerful, especially in professional play. I can see this being really strong because if any crowd control lands, you get the pull back, and you can possibly either capitalize on that or force out summoner spell. So that's honestly the strongest part of Swain's kit, and it doesn't even do any damage. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that change if Swain does start seeing play in the LCS. The other advantage Swain has is Vision of Empire, which is a very powerful spell. Now, it costs almost 100 mana at rank 1, so it's not an ability you can really use that much early on, but it's still really strong just because of the vision it grants in the range it grants. Swain is standing in the middle of mid lane. He can pretty much hit both his blue buff and the opponent's blue buff with Vision of Empire, which means that early on in the game, Swain has unparalleled ability to scout out enemy junglers or other enemy champions that are roaming around with Vision of Empire. He just pops that on their wolves at level 3. Oh, wolves aren't there. Okay, their jungler started topside. Or he pops that on the raptors are there. You know he's not bot side. Bot lane, you can keep playing aggressively. It's a really strong ability, and there's a reason it costs so much mana and has such a high cooldown, and that's why. The scouting potential on the ability is the strongest part of it. The damage, it's alright. The fact that it gives soul fragments is also valuable, but the scouting potential is what's really going to make Swain strong, especially in some kind of organized play setting, because he can pretty much always look around and see and get information, which is really good and definitely one of the strongest aspects of Swain's kit. Now, the rest of Swain's kit, I think, is still pretty good as well. I was saying in my original video that I didn't know how well Swain's abilities were going to play together, but I think they actually play together quite well. You land the E at max range, you can pull them backwards into your Q, so you get more lightning bolt hits, so you do more damage. If you're smart enough, you could probably land a W as well, if you land the root and then immediately pull them backwards and cast W, so they are in the W when they get pulled back. You could probably get more damage off of that, but already just the combo with pulling someone back into a Death's Hand is pretty effective, especially at trading. So I'm happy to see how well all that plays together. Swain's ultimate, though, is a little weird. It's not quite as much of a toggle as it was in its previous iteration, so you need to be really careful about where you actually are using your ultimate. However, it also doesn't get that much value if you're all by yourself, so I'm not quite sure really how strong it is or how much value Swain's going to get out of it. I get the feeling that Swain is going to be very strong in basically team fighting, where you have a very structured team fight. Your tanks go in, they initiate the fight, Swain follows up on the back line, popping R as he goes in. That would be like the ideal situation for Swain, because then he has tanks who are soaking the aggro, keeping people trapped in the area of effect, so Swain can keep dealing damage, soak enough health, and then finish things off with a Demon Flare. That feels like the biggest reason for Swain's ultimate is the damage you get from Demon Flare. It's very, very high, and it's in a very large area of effect. So Swain pretty much needs to be getting to that point in a team fight, and without enough enemy champions nearby, he just can't proc it fast enough for it to ever be worth it, because Swain is a lot like a Juggernaut. He has a lot of damage, he has a reasonable amount of durability, but he has no way of really sticking to somebody. He's got the one E, that's it, and it's relatively easy to dodge, especially if you know it's coming or Swain doesn't position it properly. You just kind of walk away from it, and then Swain has no real way of getting back in. He pretty much has to build a Rylai's, because otherwise people just run away from him when his ultimate is ticking, and there's nothing he can do about that. So, and that's one of the biggest reasons, that's one of the biggest weaknesses I think Swain has, is just trying to stick to people. Now, the other thing is that Swain is very, very strong against short-range mages, other short-range mages or melee champions. So, and he can bully them very effectively with the E and the Q and do a lot of damage, especially someone like Diana, for example, who has to be on top of Swain. Well, she's going to eat the entirety of Death's Hand, which is a lot of damage, especially given that you max it first. However, long-range mages like Brand or Xerath, who have really good wave clear, give Swain a decent chunk of trouble, just because he can't wave clear that effectively, especially not early on, because he does automatically get blocked. Death's Hand lightning bolts get blocked by minions unless they kill them, and E obviously stops on the first enemy unit hit. So there's a limit to how much wave clear Swain can have, so other champions with bigger range can just kind of push him in forever, and there's nothing he can do about it. He can't trade back into them, he can't land any of his skill shots, nor can he clear the wave. So that is the biggest reason why I think Swain is not really that great in the mid lane. I think he's a situational counterpick in the mid lane if you end up against someone like Vladimir or Diana, because Swain just kind of farms it out. He can harass them pretty effectively. He doesn't have to worry so much about those champions because he has reasonable wave clear. He's comparable wave clear, I should say, against them. And he has the similar ranges, so he can trade back with them if they try to trade on him. Now, if he plays against a longer range mage, though, he has nothing he can do about that. And given that LCS at least currently favors very high wave clear champions like Azir and Talia and Ryze, like, there's no way Swain is ever going to get played mid lane. Now, top lane is another matter. I actually don't know who you can play into Swain to have a reasonable chance of killing him. It kind of feels like any melee champion, any melee bruiser won't be able to do too much because he is ranged, and his auto attacks have a pretty long range as well, so he can do a lot of harassment up there, and if you do try to get on top of him, you're just asking for a Death's Hand straight to the face for a lot of damage. And a lot of the ranged champions, well, Swain is also ranged, so you can't poke him down as easily, and he's very durable, which makes it difficult for someone who wants to try for an all-in, like Gnar or Quinn, to do a whole lot to Swain. He can just kind of sustain it out and farm it up and not worry about it too much. So I think that Swain is a very strong top lane pick. I don't think he can kill a lot of the top lane champions. His damage is pretty low early on because you usually want to go Rod of Ages into something else. So I don't necessarily think that Swain is going to be that great in the top lane, at least as in terms of getting kills or bullying people. But I think that that's probably the best position for him to be played in. His mid lane just feels a little too unorthodox. It doesn't bring enough to the table. Top lane is definitely where he's better at. Think about Vladimir and how Vlad works. You play him top lane, not mid lane, because he doesn't have the wave clear, and he's better in the top lane against those kinds of champions. That's where it feels like Swain will get played more often, because he has similar advantages to Vlad in that scenario, and he has similar kind of great team fighting, reasonable split pushing. He can bully enemy champions top lane. So Swain potentially has the ability to be played in the LCS in the top lane if teams are willing to practice him and basically say, is he better than Vlad? Because Vlad is the biggest competition Swain has to be played in professional play. And at the moment, at least, I can't see a lot of teams being willing to put in the time to figure out if Swain is better or worse than Vlad, but I could definitely see it at some point possibly being something that teams evaluate and say, hey, you know, we think this is good, maybe we'll play this. So, but that's just my few thoughts. We'll see how it ends up playing out. We'll see once the pros get their hands on new Swain and start figuring out how to break him. Anyways, those are all just my thoughts on the Swain rework. I'm absolutely in love with this champion. I think he's a lot of fun, and I will definitely keep playing him in the future, as I just think he's really cool and he's a lot of fun to play. So those are just my thoughts, though. Let me know what you guys are thinking of the Swain rework down in the comment section below, especially if you are a Swain main. I would love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on Swain's new kit, what he's been doing, what he does well, what he doesn't do well compared to the old rework. I think I would love to hear you guys' comments. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. And if you're looking for more Grab the Lantern content, you can check out my blog, link down in the description. I upload an article just about each and every single day for your enjoyment. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I will talk to you all later.